ABC 10 News at 5 starts right now. As the push to get more Americans out of Afghanistan continues, we'll tell you how local veterans are trying to rescue Afghan allies stuck in that country.
Plus, the FDA does grant full approval to the COVID Pfizer vaccine, how it could impact those who've yet to get their shot.
And concerns over partying and violence as students return to San Diego State. Details on what happened this past weekend.
ABC 10 News at 5 starts now.
The U.S. says it's expecting to get all Americans out of Afghanistan by the end of the month. That's the deadline agreed to by the Biden administration and the Taliban for U.S. troops to leave. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kimberly Hunt.
And I'm Steve Atkinson. The Taliban says if the U.S. does not leave the country by that time, it would be crossing a red line. ABC's Alex Perche has the latest from Washington.
Less than 10 days before the U.S.'s withdrawal deadline from Afghanistan, evacuations are ramping up amid the possibility of new threats at the airport in Kabul.
Every day we have troops on the ground. These troops, innocent civilians at the airport, face the risk of attack from ISIS.
President Biden addressing the nation Sunday, a Pentagon order now compelling 6 commercial airlines to fly evacuees who have already left Afghanistan. The U.S. has evacuated at least 16,000 people from Kabul in the last 24 hours. More than 37,000 have been evacuated since August 14th, according to the Pentagon. Flights of Americans and Afghans arriving at U.S. airports. This group unloading at Dulles International in Virginia before loading onto buses. The president says the U.S. is conducting thorough security screenings for all non-U.S. citizens when they arrive at transit centers, and that anyone arriving in the U.S. will have undergone a background check. But given the sheer volume of evacuees, there are concerns over needing to extend the August 31st deadline, a proposal the Taliban said would cross a red line.
If they are intent on continuing the occupation, so it will provoke a reaction.
The Pentagon responding vaguely today.
We've seen the public statements by the Taliban spokesman about their views on the 31st of August. I think we all understand that view.
Meanwhile, in Kabul, the pandemonium outside the airport not letting up. Thousands of Afghans gathered by the airport gates, the chaos and confusion, a dangerous mix. One NATO official telling Reuters at least 20 people have died in and around the airport since last Saturday, and among them a 2-year-old girl reportedly trampled to death. Well, in this afternoon, a U.S. official telling ABC News that it's highly unlikely the deadline will be extended. Alex Perche, ABC News, Washington.
San Diego veterans are doing what they can to help rescue Afghan allies. ABC 10 News reporter Rachel Bianco tells us about the Army vet who says there are a couple of things the U.S. can do to speed up evacuations.
His name was Aleem Shah.
Everybody has their Aleem Shah.
Dan Wilson is a retired lieutenant colonel in the Army. Shah was his partnered Afghan battalion commander. But to Wilson, Shah was so much more than his title.
Everybody had that person that kind of showed them that we're not so much different from each other, even though we're culturally vastly different.
Wilson can share Shah's picture because he is not hiding from the Taliban. He was killed in 2013 by an explosive device. The San Diego vet, now part of a virtual army, doing everything they can to help get other Afghan allies to safety.
We need to be truthful with them. And just to keep repeating, we're going to get as many people out as possible. What an Afghan hears out of that is, that means me, and that means now. And it's just creating conditions that are making it more dangerous for our people on the ground.
Wilson believes the State Department needs to make it easier for people to get their special immigrant visa and make it more clear who is eligible rather than having everyone crush the airport.
We're not helping them by not telling the Afghans, hey, look, if you are not an American citizen, green card holder, or a civ candidate, we're not going to let you in, so go to somewhere safe.
Wilson is calling on lawmakers to lean on vets like himself to help with the applications.
I get it. I'm like, the State Department has a system, but this is extraordinary times and calls for extraordinary, out-of-the-box, creative solutions.
A solution Wilson hopes to be a part of for Shah and all of the Afghan faces he can't show because they are in hiding for their lives. Rachel Bianco, ABC 10 News.
Keep track of new developments with our ABC 10 News mobile app. We will send push alerts right to your phone. Just search 10 News in the App Store.
Now to the pandemic. Major news on the vaccine front as the FDA did grant full approval to the Pfizer vaccine. As ABC's Morgan Norwood reports, the federal government hopes more people will now get the shot.
As the Delta variant rages, the FDA granting full approval of the Pfizer COVID vaccine for those 16 and older, making it the first to be fully licensed in the U.S.
This is a pivotal moment for our country in the fight against the pandemic.
The approval comes as more than 80 million eligible Americans are still unvaccinated. 31% of those who haven't gotten the shot say they would if it's approved by the FDA. Pfizer releasing a statement saying the public can be confident that this vaccine meets the FDA's gold standard for safety.
By following our rigorous processes to evaluate this application, we hope those who have waited until now to make the choice to protect themselves and thereby also help protect their communities by reducing the spread of COVID-19 will go and get vaccinated.
With the FDA backing the vaccine, businesses, school districts, and government agencies now have even more legal cover to require vaccinations. The Pentagon immediately announcing it will press ahead with plans to require members of the military to get their shots. New York City mandating vaccines for teachers and school staff.
This is a game-changing moment. We've been waiting for this for a long time to have the full approval of vaccine. We now have it. This helps us move forward, and we're moving forward with our schools with this new vaccine mandate.
President Biden celebrating the approval and commissioning more companies, agencies, and school districts to require vaccines.
Requiring employees to get vaccinated or face strict requirements. And as I said last week, vaccination requirements have been around for decades.
And the Biden administration is considering a plan for booster shots for Americans starting September 20th. The CDC is set to discuss booster shots on Tuesday. Morgan Norwood, ABC News, Los Angeles.
San Diego County Chairman Nathan Fletcher responded to the news saying the COVID-19 vaccines are safe, effective, and free. Today, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration reinforced it by granting Pfizer its full approval. To protect our community, we need all San Diegans to get vaccinated.
A new study out of Israel found a Pfizer booster shot significantly improves protection for those 60 and older from COVID infections and serious illness. The country's health ministry says people in that age group who got the third jab were 4 times more protected than those who got 2 doses. Protection from serious cases and hospitalization was 5 to 6 times higher. Israel was the first country to approve booster shots. The U.S. plans to start giving boosters out to the general public in September. Many San Diegans are still coping with symptoms weeks or even months after having COVID. They're known as long haulers. And today on ABC 10 News at 11 o'clock, Kathleen Kennedy from Sharp told us that they've been learning how to treat those symptoms. However, no 2 cases are exactly the same.
We're seeing so many different scenarios. Certainly, we are seeing all of the patients that were in the hospital for a long time, possibly on ECMO, maybe on a ventilator. But we are seeing just as many who maybe were never in the hospital, went to the emergency room a couple times, and just really had a difficult time. We're also seeing some people that probably had COVID, but maybe weren't tested.
And while research is being done, there is still no way to know who is likely to have long-haul COVID symptoms or what causes them.
As COVID cases and hospitalizations climb, there is concern that hospitals in our area will have to turn away non-COVID patients from their ICUs. The COVID case count has doubled, and at times it has tripled just compared to last month. In the same period, the percentage of positive cases went up about 4%. Infectious disease specialist Dr. Christian Raymer says the county is having a difficult time keeping staff employed.
Something called moral trauma or moral injury. And we go into this field because we care about people, we want to take care of people, but the way that healthcare workers have been treated, we're exhausted after 1.5 years, 2 years.
According to county statistics, 97% of hospitalizations are from patients who are not fully vaccinated. And we just got the latest COVID numbers into the newsroom. 961 new infections were reported in our county today. That brings our total closer to 325,000. No new deaths were reported. That is typical for a Monday.
Starting tomorrow, the Old Globe Theater in Balboa Park says everyone who attends must be fully vaccinated. Along with the ticket, you'll need a vaccination card to get into the show. If you don't have your card, they'll accept a photo of it or a digital vaccine record. The audience will also need to keep their masks on during the show. Children under 12 can attend, but they must have a negative COVID test within 72 hours of the show.
This week, ABC 10 News is taking you back to school. We are focusing on the issues that parents, teachers, and students may be facing as kids are returning to the classroom during this pandemic. Our ABC 10 News reporter, Mimi Alcala, explains the mask mandate for schools and how some are handling positive COVID-19 cases.
As students across San Diego County return to school, California is requiring everyone at K-12 schools to wear masks while inside unless they have a medical exemption.
The orders that require that schools do these things are legally enforceable orders. They're backed up by health and safety code, which is law.
Bob Mueller is the coordinator of special projects for the San Diego County Office of Education. He says schools that go against the state's health order could face penalties, but the county will typically work with them to make sure they're in compliance.
We're seeing cases, positive cases on campuses. Those are primarily coming in from community exposures.
Across the county last school year, an entire class would be sent home to quarantine if someone tested positive for COVID-19. This year, it's a lot more complicated in an effort to keep kids on campus as much as possible. Those who test positive are sent home for isolation and contact tracing begins.
Now we have different rules for adults and kids, different rules for vaccinated people and unvaccinated people.
The County Office of Education worked with the County of San Diego to put together this decision tree as recommended guidance for schools dealing with positive cases. Sweetwater Union High School District, Chula Vista Elementary School District, San Diego Unified, Ramona Unified, and Poway Unified all told ABC 10 News they're using this guidance. Under the guidance, there are 4 different quarantine options for unvaccinated students who were exposed to someone who tested positive.
14-day quarantine is required for exposures outside of school. Modified in-school quarantine allows a student to remain on campus if they test twice a week every 3 days. You can return on day 8 with a negative test that was taken on day 6.
The last option for a close contact is to return on day 11 with no test required.
I think most schools are trying to provide all 3 options, but if one of them is unworkable, then they still have 2 others they can go to.
Mimi Alcala, ABC 10 News.
And again, according to the County Office of Education's guidance, if a student is exposed but is fully vaccinated and asymptomatic, they can remain on campus. Quarantine is not required. Testing, though, is recommended a few days after exposure, but not required. We will have the full guidance posted on our website at 10news.com.